The old man collapsed beside table 7 before anyone even noticed he had entered the diner. His frail body shook from exhaustion. His hands trembled as he struggled to push himself back up. Customers looked away. Some pretended not to notice. Others whispered quietly, assuming he was another homeless stranger who had wandered in from the cold streets. But one young waitress stopped everything she was doing. What happened next would change not only the old man's life, but hers as well. Before we begin, if you believe kindness still matters in today's world, please take a moment to like this video, leave a comment, share it with someone who needs a little hope today, and subscribe to the channel for more emotional stories that remind us of the power of compassion and second chances. The rain had been falling over the city for nearly 3 days without stopping. Gray clouds hung low above the streets, making everything feel cold and tired. Inside a small family diner called Maple Corner Cafe, 26-year-old Emily Parker rushed between tables carrying plates of food and refilling coffee cups. Life had never been easy for Emily. Her mother had passed away years earlier after a long illness. Medical bills had drained the family's savings. Her father worked construction whenever work was available, but jobs had become increasingly scarce. Emily worked double shifts almost every day to help pay rent and keep food on the table. Despite her own struggles, she carried something many people seemed to lose as they grew older. She carried kindness. Regular customers often noticed it. She remembered birthdays. She brought extra napkins before people asked. She greeted lonely customers with warm smiles that made them feel seen. That rainy afternoon, while balancing 3 orders at once, Emily noticed the elderly man slowly entering the diner. His coat was soaked. His shoes were worn through. His gray hair clung to his forehead from the rain. Most heartbreaking of all were his eyes. They carried the exhausted look of someone who had spent a very long time fighting battles no one else could see. The man quietly approached an empty booth near the window and sat down. Several minutes passed. He stared at the menu but never called for service. Emily eventually walked over. As she approached, she noticed something unusual. The man wasn't reading the menu. He was staring at the prices. His eyes moved from item to item before finally settling downward. The expression on his face told her everything. He was hungry. Very hungry. But he couldn't afford a meal. Emily felt a familiar ache in her chest. She remembered nights when her own family had struggled to buy groceries. She remembered watching her mother pretend she wasn't hungry so everyone else could eat. Without hesitation, Emily walked back into the kitchen. A few minutes later she returned carrying a warm bowl of chicken soup, fresh bread, and a steaming cup of tea. The old man looked surprised. His eyes widened. Emily simply smiled and placed the food in front of him. The man's lips trembled. Tears immediately filled his eyes. He stared at the meal for several seconds as though he couldn't believe it was real. Then he began eating. Not quickly. Not greedily. But carefully. Like someone who understood the value of every single bite. Emily returned to work, pretending nothing unusual had happened. Before leaving, the old man approached the register. He reached into his pocket and pulled out several coins. The amount wasn't even close to covering the meal. Emily gently pushed the coins back toward him. The old man's eyes became moist once again. Every dollar mattered. One evening he pulled Emily aside. He reminded her that restaurants existed to make money, not provide free meals. Emily understood his concerns. But she also knew she couldn't turn away someone who clearly needed help. So she found another solution. Instead of charging the meals to the diner, she quietly paid for them herself. The money came from tips she desperately needed. Money that could have helped with rent. Money that could have paid utility bills. Money that could have made her own life easier. Yet every day she continued. Because every day she saw the old man's gratitude. Weeks passed. Gradually Emily learned small pieces of his story. His name was Walter. He had once worked as a school janitor. For decades he cleaned classrooms, repaired broken desks, and helped children whenever they needed assistance. He had never earned much money. But he had always worked honestly. Years earlier his wife had passed away. Medical expenses consumed nearly everything they owned. Afterward, a series of unfortunate events left him isolated and struggling financially. Now he rented a tiny room and survived on very little. What touched Emily most wasn't Walter's poverty. It was his dignity. He never complained. Never begged. Never demanded anything. He simply accepted kindness with quiet gratitude. Over time, the two developed an unlikely friendship. The afternoon meals became less about food and more about companionship. Walter often shared stories from his younger years. Stories about helping children fix bicycles. Stories about family picnics. Stories about the wife he still missed every single day. Emily listened carefully. Many customers never realized what was happening. They simply saw a waitress chatting with an elderly man. But for Walter, those conversations became the brightest part of his week. For Emily, they became a reminder that every person carries a story worth hearing. Then something unexpected happened. One cold Thursday afternoon, Walter didn't show up. At first Emily wasn't concerned. Perhaps he wasn't feeling well. Perhaps the weather was too harsh. But the next day he didn't appear either. Nor the day after that. An entire week passed. Emily found herself glancing toward the door every few minutes. The booth near the window remained empty. A strange feeling of worry settled over her. She realized how much she had come to care about him. Finally, unable to ignore her concern any longer, Emily decided to visit the address Walter had once mentioned. The neighborhood was old and neglected. Many buildings showed signs of decay. Broken windows. Peeling paint. Cracked sidewalks. When she arrived at the boarding house, her heart sank. The landlord explained that Walter had become seriously ill. He had barely been able to leave his room. Emily immediately asked to see him. The landlord reluctantly agreed. Walter's room was tiny. A single bed. A small dresser. A worn chair near the window. The old man looked weaker than she had ever seen him. His face appeared pale. His breathing was shallow. Yet when he saw Emily standing in the doorway, his eyes brightened instantly. For the first time since arriving, he smiled. That smile nearly broke her heart. Over the following days, Emily visited whenever she could. She brought soup. Medicine. Groceries. Sometimes she simply sat beside him and listened. The situation was becoming difficult. Her own financial struggles continued. Bills piled up. Rent increased. The diner reduced employee hours due to declining business. Friends questioned why she invested so much time and money helping someone she barely knew. Emily never had a perfect answer. She only knew one thing. Nobody deserved to suffer alone. Several weeks later Walter's condition began improving. Slowly, he regained some strength. He could walk short distances again. The improvement brought relief to everyone who cared about him. Yet neither Emily nor Walter realized that a much bigger surprise was approaching. A surprise that had been years in the making. One rainy afternoon, as Emily worked her usual shift, a convoy of luxury vehicles suddenly pulled into the diner parking lot. Customers immediately noticed. Employees stared through the windows. Expensive black SUVs lined the entrance. Men in tailored suits stepped out first. Then a sleek luxury sedan stopped near the front door. The entire diner fell silent. Nobody understood why such wealthy visitors would come to a small neighborhood cafe. The front door opened. A tall man in an expensive navy suit entered. His presence commanded attention immediately. He looked successful, powerful, confident. The kind of person who appeared on magazine covers and business channels. Several customers whispered among themselves. Some even recognized him. The man was Daniel Harrison, one of the youngest billionaires in the country. Founder of a massive technology company. A businessman whose name regularly appeared in national headlines. Yet instead of approaching a table, Daniel stood quietly near the entrance. His eyes scanned the room. Searching. Looking for someone. Then his gaze stopped. He had found the person he came for. And to everyone's surprise, he was looking directly at Emily. The billionaire slowly began walking toward her. The entire diner watched in complete confusion. Emily herself looked stunned. She had never met this man before. She couldn't imagine why one of the richest people in the nation would even know her name. But what happened next would leave every customer speechless. And it would reveal a secret Walter had carried for years. A secret that would change Emily's life forever. Continue part 2, and I'll provide the complete ending, including the billionaire son's connection to Walter, the emotional climax, viewer engagement request, special comment request, and heart-touching conclusion.